What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So today I want to do a bit of a career retrospective and celebration of Edson Barboza. Okay, if you didn't know, Edson Barboza fought last weekend. He fought at UFC 330, and he lost, got knocked out by Ribovic, and he's on a, I think, 3 or 4 fight losing streak. He's well past his prime. He is 40 years old. He's had almost 40 fights. You know, he's not been his best in quite some time. But he is a guy who should get more celebration than he does. He is a terrific action fighter, a terrific highlight fighter, and he's just given us so much over the years. And for newer fans, like, you might not truly appreciate this guy because, again, at the age he is, he's been long in the tooth, potentially as long as you've been watching the sport. Hold on one moment. But like to create some context here, I saw his spinning wheel kick knockout of Terry Edom live. I saw that, not live in person, but I saw that when it happened all those years ago. I was at like a Buffalo Wild Wings, and it was this Brazilian card. It was the same card where Jose Aldo knocked out Chad Mendes. It was the same card where Vitor Belfort fought Rumble Johnson at middleweight, and Rumble's missed weight at middleweight by like 13 fucking pounds or something, and Vitor beat him. It was a good card for the Brazilians, and yes, Edson Barboza knocked out Terry Edom. I'm like 99% sure it is the first ever spinning wheel kick KO in the history of the UFC, and it was interesting because like a bit of a like MMA striking history here, but from MMA's early portion, you didn't see like fancy kicks hardly at all. Okay, because very quickly, like from the UFC 1 days onward, it was kind of shown that the full contact combat sports, like that they were the striking arts worth doing, that they were the striking arts that were beating everything else. When Muay Thai and boxing and kickboxing guys were fighting kung fu and karate guys and shit like that, and taekwondo guys, the full contact combat sports practitioners were getting the better of it, right? So very quickly, it was like, okay, the shit that works is like boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo. Like, that's the shit that really works. You know, the real core. You know, the main four in MMA was classically boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. That's what people were doing. And people were doing kind of, you know, anyone who didn't come from a high-level professional striking background, you know, if you weren't a Mirko Cro Cop or something, you weren't like a K1 fighter who came over to MMA. The other people who were just sort of learning it all collectively, they were tending to learn a sort of pared down version of Muay Thai, you know, kind of power punches, low kicks, like double collar tie, knees in the clinch. Like, that was kind of the bread and butter of most people's striking games. Like, you know, we're talking a time when people are still figuring out like how to safely kick a wrestler without getting taken down and shit like that. And you didn't see much other than round kicks. You know what I mean? Because you think of Muay Thai and kickboxing, you know, the teep and the round kick are the main things. You still hardly see people teep in MMA. Sean Strickland is a standout example as like a teep and jab specialist. But yeah, you don't see a lot of that now. And back in the day, you weren't seeing a lot of karate and taekwondo mixed in. People weren't doing lots of front snap kicks and side kicks and all that kind of shit. People weren't doing the oblique kicks yet. All that kind of stuff is mostly round kicks. So if you saw someone get knocked out by a head kick, it was a round kick, right? It was, you think of like Cro Cop knocking everyone out with his left high kick. That's what you saw. When Anderson Silva knocked out Vitor Belfort with a front kick to the face, that was a big deal. And it really kind of added to Anderson's aura and to his like Matrix-like reputation as just being this otherworldly martial artist. And it was aided by like Joe Rogan just being wildly inaccurate and being like, I remember watching that fight live as well and hearing Joe Rogan just be like, he knocked him out with a front kick to the face. I've never seen that before in kickboxing, in Muay Thai, in karate, taekwondo. I've never seen someone get knocked out with a front kick to the face. And it's like, bro, people have been knocked out by, like, Lyoto Machida had knocked out Rich Franklin, not in the UFC, but had knocked out Rich Franklin with a front kick to the face before Anderson knocked out Vitor. And yes, people get knocked out with front kicks in karate and other things. Like, it happens, Joe Rogan. But yeah, that was sort of a wake-up call to the MMA world of like, oh, okay, maybe we're being too limited in how we're approaching the striking arts here and the striking tools. And I feel like very soon after that, you just saw more flashy kick knockouts. And it's not long after that fight that, yes, we see Edson Barboza score the first spinning wheel kick knockout in UFC history. And that was just the start of a long fucking UFC career of excitement from Edson. Because, again, he's had like almost 40 fights, and I believe he was 8-0 or 7-0 when he debuted in the UFC. So, like, over 30 fucking fights in the UFC, mixing between lightweight and featherweight, two of the best divisions. The guy's had a storied career, and he's had like tons and tons and tons of flashy knockouts. Like, he's knocked people out with like knees to the head, with round kicks to the head, with round kicks to the body, with low kicks, like with punches. Like, what more could you want? And he gave us one of the greatest beatdowns in the history of the sport. I didn't include this in my top 15 greatest fights of all time video because for fights to kind of qualify for that video, they needed to be kind of competitive, right? They needed to be more fights and wars and less beatdowns. Whereas this is very much a beatdown. But Edson Barboza versus Dan Hooker, if you haven't seen it, that is worth watching. That is one of the most egregious, just ass kickings you will ever see. Dan Hooker does not have a lot to offer. He is just having like a mid-range kickboxing match with Barboza and getting fucking like just walloped and like to the legs, to the body, to the head. He's eating the flushest like spinning side kicks to the liver you'll ever see. And he is just gutting it out, but not giving much back. And I remember showing that fight to like friends of mine, like martial arts friends of mine who don't watch much MMA, and them being kind of like shocked almost. It's like, they're just like watching. It's like, dude, Jesus Christ, like call the fucking cops or something. Like this poor guy is just getting like turned to hamburger in this fight. It's terrific. Like, if it's older now, that's like, that fight's got to be like 10 years old now. If you haven't seen it, like, go fucking watch it. It's awesome. And yeah, Edson, like, he goes on, you know, he'd always like win some, lose some. He's got some really good wins. You know, the Dariush win is terrific. But he would always lose to like the very elite. Like, he would lose to Khabib. He would even lose to guys who are like a tier below very elite sometimes. Like, he would lose to your Kevin Lees and your Tony Ferguson, or not Tony Ferguson. Well, he did lose to Tony Ferguson, but your Donald Cerrone's, like guys like that. And it's a shame. Like, I feel like he isn't remembered as fondly as a lot of those kinds of guys. Like, people like Cerrone and Ferguson and Gaethje and those kinds of action fighters, the Diaz brothers, like, those guys are all beloved in a way that I feel like Edson always gets overlooked. But he does kind of belong in that company, and he fought a lot of those fucking guys, right? And he beat terrific fighters. You know, he beat Anthony Pettis. You know? And he even had good wins, like, at featherweight later. Like, that Shane Burgos fight is terrific. Even in a loss, like, that loss against Lerone Murphy, which got fight of the night and turned into a good, like, scrap, that was, like, a terrific last stand for Edson. He loses the fight, but to show some grit later in age was awesome. You know, he wasn't the perfect fighter. You know, he had his weaknesses. He didn't like being pressured, and he could always be out-grappled by someone of sufficient skill and physicality. You know, he kind of wanted to have this mid-range kickboxing match without a lot of distance management involved. And, you know, he was a guy who kicked like a fucking mule and like threw knees like a fucking mule. And he looked really muscular and explosive, and he threw punches with like decent form. But for some reason, he couldn't like crack with his hands nearly the same way he could crack with his feet. So, you know, again, not a perfect fighter, but as far as a career action fighter who just gave us like some of the best highlights in the history of the sport, and who's had like a weird amount of longevity for a guy who just kind of never quite reached the top or anything, he's a standout fighter. You know, because at this point, yeah, like he's kind of like a Jim Miller or like a Bobby Green or, you know, like these kinds of guys who've had these long runs. You know, a Charles Oliveira type. Yeah, I mean, like he's not reached those heights, of course, but I think of Oliveira in that, like, Oliveira has spent like his whole fucking life in the UFC at this point. Edson's the same way, you know? I don't know. I feel like Edson is overlooked. I saw his fight this weekend and I immediately said, like, okay, I need to do like a career retrospective for this guy. And what was cool to see was someone left a comment on one of my videos this week and said, like, someone needs to do a career video for Edson. And I said, and I replied and said, oh, it's on my list, don't worry. But I am worried though that Edson is the kind of guy who is just going to be forgotten in not a long time. You know, that he's already kind of being forgotten, that people just don't talk about him very much, even when he's fighting on a big numbered event. You know, people aren't tuning in. People aren't very interested. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that fight was amazing or anything, or that when I saw that on the main card, I wasn't just that I was like, oh my God, can you believe it? Like, 3-fight losing streak, old man Edson Barboza is fighting. Like, can you believe it? Like, you got to tune in. You got to tune in right now. No, that wasn't my reaction either. It still contributed to like the weakness of the card, but I did still watch it, and I still like cared in the sense that I do care about Edson. And yeah, I feel like he's just not going to get the kind of like recognition and remembrance that other fighters with similar careers typically do. And that's a shame. That's a shame. So I wanted to quickly shout the guy out and give you a quick kind of coverage of his highlights. Go watch his fights. Go watch that Dan Hooker fight. Go watch his highlights. Just like, if you're not like pretty well versed in the Edson Barboza story, you got some homework to do, because it's a story very much worth reading. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think down below. Like if you have not, subscribe if you have not. Check out my other YouTube channel if you have not. It is called Michael Walsh Nerd Stuff. On that channel, I talk about nerd stuff. I talk about comic books, video games, anime, sci-fi, all that kind of shit. If you're interested in that, go check it out. If not, no worries. Just stick around here. But in any case, take care.